Now that the silent era is now reaching at its end, the sound era is coming, and it's ready for some new horror. Well, it's about that time again for another HorrorVision. So, on the 6th episode, we're actually going to be talking about a horror classic from Universal. Now that we are done with the silent era, we're now onto the sound era, and this time we're onto the golden age of classic horrors. And today we're going to be looking at the 1931 classic, Dracula.
I am Dracula.
Dracula was released on February 14th, 1931. Follows a British soldier by the name of Renfield, played by Dwight Fry, who is brought to Dracula's castle, where Dracula makes him a mindless slave to travel to London and takes up residence in an old castle. Soon Dracula wreaks havoc, sucking the blood of young women, turning them into his own vampires. This is one of the most interesting things that I have seen from a vampire movie, and I think I would dub it the best Dracula movie due to the fact of good performances by both Dwight Fry and and also Edward Van Sloan. Excuse me. But the one that really is the star of this film is Hungarian actor Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi learned the English language when he was on stage or when he was in film. The rhythm in his accent is kind of like the way Dracula would talk, and that's probably part of the mainstream. This film has got a 7.5 out of an IMDb rating, a 4 out of 4 of Roger Ebert, and a 91% of Rotten Tomatoes. Again, I'm one of the fans too, and for good reasons. Dracula was one of those types of mainstream type movies here. I mean, again, back in the day, you were supposed to go to the theater in order to see the movie. But if you missed that movie, you missed it. That was during the day. That was back in the days of the 1930s. And the kind of like style that I think is so interesting with Dracula, or mostly, is Bela Lugosi himself. He's become one of those types of stars that has such a good accent that he and not only that, he feels like he's a good gentleman as well. And if you actually look on YouTube, there's actually a interview that he was in, where he now talks like he's now an American citizen, and he actually was trying to talk some type of American slang. I don't know what type of American slang he was saying, but it's really nice to actually see that somebody from Hungary, I think, excuse me, can actually be part of American life. And the man himself is a really nice guy. I mean, just the way he talks is just what makes it nice. And I think that's what makes Dracula such a really, really good, like a really good, acting performance for Bela Lugosi. Dwight Fry himself is also good as Renfield, the nice, kind, gentle soldier, but also the crazy, mindless slave of Dracula. His laugh isn't enough to make you actually faint, which is kind of scary. The movie has a very slow, but also very creepy-like atmosphere. Since there is no music, they actually had to at least have the dialogue in it. And still, even without the music, it gets that creepy type scene. One of my favorite scenes is where Dracula looks into a box of sorts, and it has a mirror in it. Since you all know vampires can't cast reflections, he slaps the box and does this big cold stare, but more like a concerned stare, but it goes back to the kind of like demon-like stare that Bela Lugosi is known to be using in his roles. He is one guy that is just, I would call, one of the masters of horror, and the best Dracula as well. The rhythm and tone of his accent, and the kind of like foggy castles that are just crumbling. And I consider it that because, I mean, me watching it myself, I actually find it to be one of the most interesting movies compared to Nosferatu. Nosferatu brought in the creep factor, but never brought the whole Dracula thing into mainstream, which is what Bela Lugosi did for Dracula. And he has become one of the most iconic horror stars in all of horror history, and I think for good reason. He plays Dracula and probably any type of vampire so well, because he has that type of stare that doesn't let go. He never blinks, and I mean, I'm a guy who's going to keep blinking all this time, so he has that type of thing that never lets go at all. He just stares into their viewer, and he kind of like has this type of like, he's both like confident but a little overconfident. But even when he's not overconfident, we can at least see what the beast lies within this man. And Bela Lugosi does a pretty good job of that. I mean, in his younger days, it was difficult for him probably to speak the English language, but probably now that he was older now, it actually is much easier for him. And I thank the guy for that, for him becoming one of the greatest horror stars of all time. He has become one of those types of horror stars that we all would enjoy in horror history. And I thank him for that. It's a big round of applause for me, and he deserves a lot of it. Tune in next week, or tune in tomorrow, because we're going to be looking at a man who was created by not a doctor, but a mad scientist.
Indeed.